From a car that looks straight out of a superhero comic book to an elegant Italian-styled machine with a Hemi V8 under the hood. In this video, we'll take a look at 11 rare cars Chrysler built, but never released. Kicking things off is the 1952 Chrysler C-200. Built on a Saratoga chassis, it carried a unique detail, the gun sight tail lamps, a detail that later appeared on Imperial models. The C-200 was essentially the convertible version of the K310, designed by Virgil Exner's team in collaboration with Ghia. Chrysler considered producing both cars, but the funding wasn't there. The K310 seated 4, while the C-200 made room for 5 as a convertible coupe. What really set it apart were the fresh design ideas. Details like blister fenders and a lowered beltline weren't common at the time, and it's fair to say they hadn't been seen on the road or even at auto shows before the C-200 appeared. Next up is the 1953 Chrysler D'Elegance. Virgil Exner went back to a fastback shape for this one, trimming the New Yorker's wheelbase down to 115 inches, which made it feel more like a two-seater than anything else. The styling carried some influence from the earlier Chrysler Special, though it added a few new touches of its own. And yes, you're going to see a lot of gun-sight taillights in this video. If the shape rings a bell, that's because Volkswagen bought the rights to the design. Ghia scaled it down to fit the Beetle's chassis, and with Carrosserie Karmann building the bodies, the result was the Volkswagen Karmann Ghia in 1954. Funny enough, Ghia's name ended up on it, even though the original design came from Exner. In third place is the 1954 Chrysler GS1 Special. Chrysler's export division had 2 New Yorker Deluxe chassis that year, each with a 125.5-inch wheelbase, a 235-horsepower Hemi V8, and a PowerFlight automatic transmission. Both were sent to Ghia to be fitted with unique special-style bodies. These GS1 Specials stood out from other Ghia creations with 4-passenger interiors and flat exhaust tips. They also borrowed plenty of Chrysler parts, from bumpers and taillights to the steering wheel, dashboard gauges, and even wire wheels. The cars were likely used by Chrysler for promotional purposes across Europe, including the 1954 Turin show. After one of the two had served its purpose, it was offered to Chrysler's board of directors. W. Alton Jones, a Citgo gas executive, brought it home for his wife. According to the story, Mrs. Jones tried it out, shrugged, and said,
"It's like sitting on the floor,"
before going out and buying a new Bentley. Their daughter Elizabeth, on the other hand, was captivated, calling it the most beautiful car she had ever seen, and wanting it for herself. By the way, if you enjoy videos like this one, we've just launched a new channel with the same vibe, focused on classic European and Australian cars. There's already a video in the style of 10 rare cars a brand built but never released for Jaguar, plus another on what might be Australia's first supercar. The link's in the description and pinned comment, so feel free to check it out and subscribe. Thanks for the support. Now, let's get back to the video. Coming in fourth is the 1955 Chrysler Falcon, the closest Chrysler ever got to building a true sports car until the Viper showed up almost 40 years later. A lot of people still say this was the one Exner design that absolutely should have gone into production, and the timing couldn't have been better. By 1955, Ford had launched the Thunderbird, Chevy already had the Corvette, and Chrysler's own sales were starting to recover. A Mopar 2-seater would have been the perfect answer. Now, here's where it gets interesting. No one really knows how many Falcons were actually built. Some say just 1, others claim 2, and there's evidence for as many as 3. What we do know is that they all shared a 105-inch wheelbase, right in line with the T-Bird and Corvette, but each car had its own little differences. Styling was led by Maury Baldwin, and it still holds up today. That big, heart-shaped egg crate grille, the side-mounted exhausts, the fins, even the wraparound windshield. Somehow it all works without looking too dated. Under the hood sat a 170-horsepower DeSoto Hemi paired with Chrysler's PowerFlight automatic. Balanced, precise steering, great road manners, things you just didn't expect from Detroit at the time, let alone Chrysler. The downside? That low windshield meant almost no headroom with the top-up, though that probably would have been sorted out if it ever made production. Sadly, it never did. The sports car market was too small, and Chrysler decided to stick with volume sellers instead. As for the cars themselves, the original Black Falcon was given to Exner, who even raced it in SCCA events, but it eventually disappeared without a trace. A second car, painted light blue, resurfaced decades later in Joe Bortz's collection. And then there are rumors of a third one, painted red. In fifth place is the 1955 Chrysler Flight Sweep 1, a convertible built by Ghia that let Chrysler test out tail fins, which would become a big part of their 1957 models. The Flight Sweep 1 was part of Chrysler's forward-look cars. It was first shown in 1955 and later appeared in Chrysler's display at the 1956 Chicago Auto Show. At just 53.6 inches tall, it had 4 seats, upswept tail fins, integrated bumpers, and a sharply angled 56-degree windshield. Coming in sixth is the 1956 Chrysler Dart. At the time, it was the most aerodynamic car in the world, tested and fine-tuned in one of Europe's largest wind tunnels. Its drag was less than a third of any other passenger car on the road. The design came from Virgil Exner's studio at Chrysler, and his influence shows throughout the car. The Dart had a wraparound rubber bumper that protected the car without messing with its lines or aerodynamics. The roof had a clever sliding panel that could be removed and stored behind the rear seat, or partially retracted so the front seat was open while the rear stayed covered. Chrysler even called it a hydroplane on wheels, and it's easy to see why. Its 223-inch length, tilted-up fins, and advanced chassis and suspension were built for speed and stability. With a 129-inch wheelbase, it was 6 inches lower than Chrysler's 1956 production cars, and at 80 inches wide and 54 inches tall, it was the lowest full 4-passenger sedan of its time. Power came from a Firepower V8, and the car even had induced brake cooling, using air funneled through finned wheel covers at 40 miles per hour. Up next is the 1957 Chrysler Diablo, a convertible coupe concept that captured the space-age excitement of the 1950s. This was a time in the US when rockets, interplanetary travel, and futuristic visions dominated the imagination, and automakers were eager to explore what the cars of the future might look like. Chrysler used concept cars like this to impress audiences and test the waters to see which features might appeal most. Before the Diablo, the company had already showcased other concepts like the ones we've seen earlier. In fact, the Diablo's story actually begins in 1956 with the Dart concept. After touring that year, it returned to Ghia, where the hardtop was replaced with a convertible softtop, the engine was tuned, and the suspension improved. It came back as the Dart 2 for the 1957 season, painted in Italiano red and shown at several European venues. Later that summer, it returned to Ghia for more extensive updates, including major body changes. When it came back to the US, it was renamed the Diablo. Next up is the 1966 Chrysler 300X. Basically, they took a Chrysler 300 and modified it extensively. And when I say extensively, I mean they basically turned it into a spaceship. Just take a look at the cockpit. Instead of a regular steering wheel, it had adjustable hand grips with push-button controls for lights, wipers, turn signals, and door locks. The door handles were shaved, and you could use a key punch card to open the doors and start the ignition. Rear-view mirrors? Gone. They were replaced with a TV camera on the back and a monitor on the dash. Passengers in the rear even had a small television that could be tucked away when not in use. I couldn't find much about who led the 300X project, but I did read that legendary custom car builder Gene Winfield is credited with bringing it to life. At ninth place is the 1969 Chrysler Concept 70X. This car had some really crazy features, like parallelogram doors, the kind you see on today's minivans. Inside, there was a small ultrasonic device next to the rear seat speaker that could scan 50 feet behind the car in 3 zones: left lane, right lane, and straight back. If a vehicle entered any of those zones, a red warning light would pop up on the mirror, giving the driver a heads up before a possible collision. Honestly, in my opinion, this car looks like it belongs in a superhero comic book, but I'm still not sure whether the hero or the villain would be driving it. Up next is the 1970 Chrysler Cordoba de Oro. Designed by Elwood Engel, Chrysler's styling chief, this car was unique in many ways, from its strong wedge profile to the cantilever roof with no A-pillars and the rear spoiler that raised automatically. The interior had some unusual touches too, like a thermostatically controlled air intake and experimental headlights. At least one normal feature? Well, it was built on Chrysler's standard 124-inch wheelbase. At number 11, we finish off the list with the 1992 Chrysler Cirrus. This project was Chrysler showing off what their next-generation compact sedans might look like, just like a thesis, as the company itself described it. Power came from a turbocharged 3.0-liter Fury V6 that could run on fuel-grade alcohol and produced 400 brake horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute. One of the most interesting features was its layout. The Cirrus eliminated the B-pillars thanks to rear-hinged back doors, making entry and exit far easier. And it rode on 18-inch wheels that were wrapped in special tread tires made by Goodyear. The information in this video was gathered from the sources shown on screen. As always, you can find the sources in the Google Doc linked in the description. I recommend checking them out for more details. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and click on the recommended video that appears on the screen. It's all about 10 rare cars Ford built but never released, including forgotten ones like the Ford Gyron and the Mystere. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.